I mean, austerity measures have never worked anywhere.
Yeah.
There's no example in the world of austerity actually working. And one of the best ways to look at that in terms of Greece is that everybody, I think, is now familiar with the fact that at a nominal level, Greek sovereign debt is about 180% of GDP. So it's a very, very high level for a sovereign level. But actually, most of that has happened since 2008, 2009. And the biggest proportion of that isn't new borrowing. The reason that that's risen so dramatically is that Greek GDP has fallen by something like a third over that time. Normally you might expect it to have increased by a third, so it's probably only at about half the level. Greek GDP is only at about half the level that you'd expect it to be. And therefore, the debt level, even if it just keeps growing by the amount of interest or refinance or rollover, even if they don't borrow any more money, then the debt level is getting to unsustainable levels just because of the falling GDP. So austerity is really what's crippling Greece at the moment, and it's totally strangling the entire economy.
So it still be critical to tackle.
Absolutely. The real answer for Greece is that Greece has to start to grow its economy again. And when the debt level is at the height that it is, 180%, I think everybody realizes that actually that debt it doesn't matter how you try and restructure it, it's so high, that debt level has got to be effectively written off. Greece is in default because of the fact it can't pay that, it can never repay that debt level. And therefore, people need to really admit that. But again, one of the things that happened in 2012 was when the Troika came in and they bailed out. They didn't bail out Greece. They actually bailed out the German banks and the rest of the European institutions, because these guys were holding the Greek sovereign debt. And so by transferring it from European banks, mainly German banks, then at that point, actually what happened is, the bailout took Greece out of the markets, but it took the risk away from German banks too. And
the German savers.
Absolutely. Well, it's. I mean, in theory, it's to European taxpayers. But I think the point is, back in 2012, everybody knew at that point Greece couldn't repay its debts. It was impossible even then. But what they did is they just changed who the creditor was going to be. And now, 3 years further on, we're in a situation, absolutely Greece can't repay those debts, but now it's the Troika that it has to negotiate with, and that's why the negotiations are going so badly.
The debt agreement which might be reached in the near term is just temporary, is that right?
I think so. I mean, so we have this situation now where, the IMF payment is due, or was due. Greece has enacted its right to say, okay, all payments that are due this month, we'll bundle them into a single payment. But really all that's doing is it's buying us a few more weeks, but even if we get a debt deal this time, there's no way that it's going to fix the long-term debt problem. So anything we do is really just buying time. And I think, a couple of things have changed in the dynamic this time around compared to previously. So one of the big changes is who the creditors are, and the fact, also that now the creditors have got every single concession that they can reasonably expect from Greece. As I say, they've forced Greece to give up economic sovereignty, and Greece is now trying to pull that back. So that's why the negotiations this time are so difficult. Greece doesn't really have anything more to put on the table. It can't really offer anything more. And again, I think one thing that's changed over the last 2 or 3 years is, because of the fact it's not German banks that are on the hook anymore, or it's not European banks that are on the hook anymore, then that makes a little bit of a difference in terms of the implication of a default. If Greece defaults on its debt, well, the EU can afford that, the ECB can afford that, the IMF can afford that, because it's a relatively small amount. So I think what's happening now is it's kind of like a high-stakes game of poker. And I think where we're likely to get an accident occurring is that, to me, the Troika seem very, very complacent about the risks here. They seem to think that because they've got all the concessions already, because they've taken the debt off individual or corporate or banking balance sheets, they seem to think they can afford a Greek default. And they can, because a Greek default doesn't cost very much. But the issue then is about the contagion. And here in this part of the world.
Maybe
We
they
remember
decide to
97.
write down instead.
Well, they won't do that. That's the point. That's what they should do. But the problem with writing down Greek debt is they then do have to write down. Whichever way you look at it, they get contagion.
Yeah,
If Greece defaults and leaves, then we worry about the contagion of everybody else defaulting and leave. If they write down the Greek debt, then everybody else is going to want their debt writing down too. So we're in a real contagion situation. As I say, anybody who remembers 1997, we remember how easily and quickly, one day the problem was Thailand, then it was Indonesia, then it was Philippines,
So
and it even
quickly.
ended up, Taiwan and Korea before no time.